When we realized big tobacco was hiding the harms it caused, the government took action. When we figured out cars were safer with seatbelts, the government took action. And when our government learned that opioids were taking lives, the government took action. I implore you to do the same here.
And Frances Haugen joins me now. Welcome to Meet the Press.
Thank you.
I want to start with why Facebook is so afraid of any government intervention. And I say this because they have helped kill all those bills I showed, that none of them came into law. And they're not alone, but they had a lot of lobbyists kill those bills. What are they afraid of?
When you look at the history of Facebook's stock price, and I did this before I came out, over the course of the 5 years before the Facebook disclosures began to become public, Facebook's stock only declined versus the NASDAQ by more than 5%, about 25 times, 27 times. Overwhelmingly, those events, when stock price declined, were when something came out that demonstrated Facebook was going to have to spend more money on safety. Facebook is scared that if we actually had transparency, if we actually had accountability, they would not be a company with 35% profit margins. They'd be a company with 15% profit margins.
Is that so bad?
Great. No, they'd be one of the most profitable companies in the world.
15% profit margin is pretty good.
It's amazing for a company their
15% return in any savings would be amazing.
I know.
So it's just simply, it wouldn't be as profitable.
It wouldn't be as profitable.
So you took this job in the civil integrity team. You had a specific motivation to do it. Tell me about it.
Back in 2016, I had a very close friend who had helped me relearn to walk. So I was very ill. I was paralyzed beneath my knees. And this person was originally an assistant who became a dear friend. And over the course of the middle of 2016, after Bernie Sanders lost the primaries, he fell down a rabbit hole where he became more and more radicalized. And watching him drift away, at the same time, I was working on the algorithms at Pinterest. I was the lead product manager for ranking at Pinterest. And as I began to look at the internet, particularly at Facebook, I would see these glaring deficits. They would have these things like a carousel under every post that would show you other posts. And you could tell that those posts were ranked based on clicks because they were always the most extreme version of whatever you saw. So this is things like you click on an article about the election, the carousel shows you a post saying the Pope endorses Donald Trump.
Right.
And it turned out that there was a whole Macedonian misinformation factory going on. Right. There was a cottage industry of these little blogs that would make these fake news stories, and Facebook was just asleep at the wheel. And so when I got offered a chance to work on civic misinformation, I thought back on that experience of watching these deficits, of watching this person who I really cared about spiral into a world of alternate facts.
Right.
And I said, this is my chance to do something.
So let's talk about an algorithm. Let me put up a definition here. The Facebook algorithm, a system that decides a post position on the newsfeed based on predictions about each user's preferences and tendencies. And what your disclosures found is how often they change the algorithm. And to me, it shows you they know what's happening. Like they can do this, but you were in the civil integrity. Did you feel as if they wanted you to succeed?
When I initially was hired, I came in with a lot of optimism. Facebook had built this center of excellence inside the company, actually one of the best civic responsibility units that was available in the industry. And it wasn't until they dissolved that unit immediately after the 2020 election that I realized the company wasn't committed to this enterprise. That if you want to have successful change in an enterprise, you have to appoint a vanguard. You have to have executives say, these people are the future. They're going to lead us in the right direction. And when Facebook dissolved civic integrity, I saw that they weren't willing to make that commitment anymore.
You said something in your statement to Congress. You say, you saw Facebook repeatedly encounter conflicts between its own profits and our safety, and Facebook consistently resolved these conflicts in favor of its own profits. Give me an example.
One of the most effective things for reducing misinformation is a very simple intervention. And it's actually free speech respecting. It's if you look at a chain of reshares, so Alice writes something, her friend Bob reshares it, her friend Carol reshares it, it lands in Dan's newsfeed. Alice doesn't know Dan, Dan doesn't know Alice. Alice could be a misinformation agent. You're outside of that social context. If you said, hey Dan, if you want to share this, you can, but you're gonna have to copy and paste. we're going to gray out that
Right.
reshare button. You have to make a choice. You can't just like knee-jerk reshare this.
May have to make a little bit of an effort.
Yeah. Be intentional. Intentionality in sharing. That has the same impact on misinformation as the entire third-party fact-checking system. And it doesn't choose which ideas are good or bad. It just says, let's have humans make choices, not just reflexes make choices. But at the same time, that reduces the amount of content spread in the system. It decreases profits very slightly. And Facebook declined to make that choice.
All of their the business model is about you and me spending time, right? There is no other business it really has other than selling advertising based on how much time I spend on it. Is that right?
Yeah.
So if this was taken away or held back, this would massively change the company?
The way to think about safety on social media platforms is there's lots of very small choices where you make them and you lose 0.1% of profit, 0.2% of profit. The problem is these industries are so sensitive to growth that when they don't grow at the level that the market expects, their stock price crashes. And so they're afraid to take even these small actions because they will decrease the profitability of the company, even by a little bit.
I want you to react to Nick Clegg. He's done a lot of writing.
Oh, Nick Clegg.
And this is one where it feels like he might as well have used the shrug emoji. It would be easier to blame everything on algorithms, but there are deeper and more complex societal forces at play. We need to look at ourselves in the mirror and not wrap ourselves in the false comfort that we have simply been manipulated by machines all along. This seems to be the reaction of Facebook on everything, which is not, hey, this isn't on us, this is society. We're just the mirror.
Nick Clegg wrote an amazing blog post in March of 2021. So he said, it takes two to tango. You're blaming us for our algorithms, but you chose your friends, you chose your interests. And yet in March of 2021, they had already run the same study at least 4 times where they took a blank account. So this is an account that doesn't have any friends, it doesn't have any interests. And they followed some center-right, center-left issues. And then all they did was click on the content Facebook gave or follow groups Facebook suggested. And in 2 weeks, they went from, center topics, things like Fox News, to white genocide, just by clicking on the content. The algorithm pushed them in a more extreme direction. It's true there are many forces in society, but our information environment does have consequences.
Well, we compartmentalized radio. We could compartmentalize TV. You can turn that off. This has been much harder to compartmentalize.
Well, it's also a question of when TV is on, if you tell a falsehood, other people can see it and respond. On radio, everyone has the same airwaves. When it comes to social media, you can spread lies and they're invisible. And Facebook has resisted even minimal efforts at transparency that might allow us to begin to reconverge on a single information environment.
So what should government regulation look like?
I'm a big proponent of transparency as the first step. I think people aren't aware of how far behind we are. Social media companies for 20 years, and remember, there were social media companies before Facebook, have all been very intentional, except for maybe Twitter. Twitter has something called the fire hose, where you can see a stream of the tweets that are being posted. Most social media companies have resisted even simple efforts to bring more people to the table to ask questions and find solutions. So things like the Platform Accountability and Transparency Act, which was recently proposed, I think is a great first step.
It's when you say transparency, is it should the government have to approve an algorithm?
We are at such a basic level of understanding right now. Like, I really want to emphasize this. This is like we're back in 1965. We don't have seatbelt laws yet. And we're just opening the pages of unsafe at any speed and saying, oh my goodness, there's all these ways we could have safer platforms. We're at that level of like nascent understanding. And so, but we have to have transparency so we can have enough people have conversations about how we move forward. Should
government be focused on user protection, consumer protection, more than trying to regulate the companies?
That's a great question. Other industries are kept safe because there is something I call the ecosystem of accountability. There's lawyers that understand what a cut corner looks like. There's investors that understand how to manage for long-term returns. Remember, Facebook's stock price is down like 70% right now. That's informed citizens like Mothers Against Drunk Driving. That's legislative aides that understand what's possible. Right now, that entire ecosystem is missing because the social media companies hid the information. And so when we talk about should we be protecting users, we are so far at the beginning that it is difficult to even put everyone at a table and say, this is the menu of what's possible. Let's negotiate what the floor looks like.
I know you don't have as much insight into other tech companies, but should we assume that this opaqueness on algorithms and how things work is similar at Twitter and at TikTok and at YouTube?
100%. So one of the most important things that Elon Musk could do to prove that he wants to have the public square is he could publish the algorithms.
Yeah. Open source.
Yeah, open source it. He'd have more help. It'd be cheaper for him. He'd be more profitable. But companies like TikTok have the exact same problems, if not more so, because TikTok is a company that is designed around being censored. You know, it comes from China.
Right.
It's designed to amplify things so much that only a few pieces of content make up 80% of all of our feeds. And they manually screen those. Yeah. We deserve to know what those policies are because they're influencing what information we get to see.
All right. Well, I'm going to get a couple lawmakers on here and see what they have to say. Frances Haugen,
thank you so much.
The Facebook whistleblower. Thanks for coming in and sharing your perspective.
Happy to be here.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.